why do you think she did it with you?
Well, she told me it was strictly because of this film, The Devil and Daniel Johnston, I had made. It spoke to her as a piece of art, and it was about an artist, and it dealt with mental illness. And Laura's, openly on the spectrum, as you see in the film. She's been institutionalized multiple times, and that was it. Other people, listen, to quote her, she said, "I'm going to work with you because you're a Jew and you come from punk rock, both of which are true."
I like the sound of that. That's great.
It's a true story. And then I read her books because in all fairness, it was important for me to read the books and evaluate them. And I read Sarah first. I think I read it on a plane. And I was a huge fan of Southern Gothic literature in college, and I'd read every stitch of Flannery O'Connor, and I was like, wow, this is fantastic writing. And it didn't surprise me after reading those books that they were so well reviewed and that they were international bestsellers. So that made it a lot easier for me to want to, start the research. I think it's great writing.
I just want to interject that I only work with Nugent because he's a half Italian wasp from who went to film school. So no punk rock there. But now, when you work with someone, like that, I mean, this is a tired question, no doubt, but I couldn't stop thinking about this when I was watching the film. How do you know when they're telling you the truth or they're not telling you the truth, or you just suspended that?
Well, it was simple. In the history of archive, I think this is one of the biggest excavations ever. And in my previous film, I thought that held, no one's keeping score on this fact, but The Devil and Daniel Johnston had one of the massive archives of all time because he also self-documented his entire life with all the Super 8, all the photos, all the little drawings, all the recordings, all the audio verite. And we drove to her house with a minivan, because I don't know what she has when we agreed to do this. And I had to go back to the airport and get a full-size van because it wasn't going to fit. And we made multiple trips from San Francisco to LA that year because she saved and documented everything. I'm not answering your question directly though. So it was about how do I know what she's telling me. So anyway, so what happened was I spent months and months going through all this and preparing for an 8-day interview where I blew up her book as a backdrop for her to stand in front of her fiction writing. And it was all on her. It's a subjective film. She wanted to tell. She's not doing me any favors. This was her chance to finally tell her side of the story, her own backstory and her own personal truth, because she was an unknown entity, as well as the saga of J.T. LeRoy, which of course is just filled with deceit. So when we did the work linearly over 8 days, and we would just go beat for beat, and it was just obvious there was nothing held back. She wanted to tell.
You go with your instincts of that. So I trust this person. I believe this person.
It's very interesting. Like Errol Morris does this thing called the Interrotron. You probably have heard of it, right? Mm-hmm. All right. It's a teleprompter, and I really respect it because I like that he breaks the fourth wall of the eyes, and Laura does that too. The thing is, I've never interrogated anybody. It was not an interrogation. I literally am there to have her stay in the first person in the moment of the saga and just have her get us through the story beats. And she can tell me anything she wants, and she shared it. And I felt that she shared very openly with all of the deceit. And I thought that was very interesting.
When I asked you earlier when we were meeting before, and I'll rephrase the question because you gave me a very good answer and kind of preemptively about. Can I share with them what you said? Or you just said you don't want to render any judgments about her. I said, what did your opinion of her change from when you first found out about the story, then you meet her, and then you. It reminds me all of like William McDonald and Jeffrey McDonald rather, and Manchester. Who wrote Fatal Vision? Manchester, I think, and then Janet Malcolm, and on and on and on, where people, there's this evolution of their feelings toward the subject and the relationship with the subject over time. And but let me ask you this, without any judgment, did your opinion of her, did your feelings for her, your understanding, however you choose to phrase it, evolve over the time you did were doing the film. And how could you describe that?
Well, very simply, I mean, I didn't know her personally at all. I knew only, like I meet many artists, I only know them through their work, and then I get a deeper understanding of them, and then we meet, and maybe we become friends, whatever. What was interesting with Laura Albert, I assumed she was very bright, because who could have done all this? I knew she was a good writer.
It's tough to do, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's incredible. And until we went through the 8 days, which was all that mattered, and she came to tell, I was just, how do I say this? It's rarely rare to see someone not try to shade it backwards and make themselves look good. Like she's like, hey, I'm Speedy, I'm sitting across from Gus Van Sant, and I'm on the phone and I'm trying to match a voice. I mean, she's just sitting there telling you this. And I was like, wow, that's unique, and this is a unique story. I'm reporting on the story, it's new journalism, it's objective, and I love the idea of not moralizing, and I think
You know, I think that,
yeah, I'm just saying.
did your empathy for her deepen as you got to the because
Well,
eventually you don't know her from the
yes,
beginning,
yeah.
but then as the movie's over, you know her quite well.
Well, listen, the whole thing, there was the backstory, let's face it. There's no way to know, starting this project, about her backstory, that she's calling hotlines as a young boy since she's really little. How I found all of her little boy-girl doodles, hundreds of them that I animated, in the margins next to scads of lists of hotlines since she's like a young girl. How she's pretending to be British since she's a teenager when she meets Skinhead Mike at the group home. How she's sending her sister out as an avatar. Like everything that she did in the JT saga, she had done previously throughout her whole life as a child. That
She just pulled it all together for the
well,
for the growth.
the fact is that that was her behavior pattern of whatever makes her tick. That's what she's been doing. So learning about all that, but back to the empathy, it's impossible not to have empathy when I learned that the themes of her books, which are largely sexual abuse and physical abuse and gender fluidity, it's not too surprising that somebody who writes fiction was channeling those issues that, as I came to learn, absolutely did happen to her as a young girl. And it's tough to not have empathy for someone who was sexually physically abused. She had a horrible childhood. And I came to learn that. And then, for me, it all kind of came together. I'm not going to say, it just made sense in some way that we were all looking for answers.
This is how she
I
processed
think
it.
that gave answers to what the hell this ever was. It was fiction way off the page, and the explanation was certainly not what we were being told when the story broke. This is the person who really shared. And then you could make up your own mind about the whole thing.
I thought it was interesting because I want you to say something because you went to film school and I didn't. He went to a very good film school, by the way. And he teaches at film school too. He's very good. Well, you ask your question first, go ahead.
Well, I mean, with regards to what you were just saying then, with the story about Uncle George having molested her when she was young, I'm just wondering why you waited until, the last 5 minutes or whatever it is of the film to insert that instead of putting it at the beginning.
Oh, well, it's the inciting incident, and the film plays linearly in the A story of Laura Albert and JT LeRoy, and the B story is the backstory. It's like Memento, and you're getting pieces of it, and it catches up with itself. And it's the final moment, the inciting incident. I thought it was literary, and it worked at the end, and it didn't work anywhere else in the film. It just seemed to work at the end.
Another sort of silly hypothetical question, but what do you think would have happened if she had put out all of these books just as herself and had not created this avatar, but just, the books were still the books, but she just put them out as, the regular person that she was?
That's a question that gets posed a lot. I don't have an honest answer because it just didn't happen. This is a true story. She clearly, as she says in the film, was not able to write as herself. She had so much self-loathing and hatred and body issues from the sexual abuse which manifested into her food addictions and things like that. She was a zero. She was nothing. She only felt alive on the phone, calling these boys and living inside this telephone fiction that went on. And once again, the phone call to Dr. Owens is probably the 17,000th hotline call as a boy she'd ever made. It just happened to be the one that terminated was on the phone that day. There was a lot of other boys that had died. I saw those lists in her notebooks. She made a zillion phone calls, and she told me all about it. Anyway, so I'm sorry, but to get to your question,
Just that idea of people trusting people, of jumping off that cliff. And some of these people were very savvy, very hip people.
Yeah, well,
I can't think of anybody more savvy and hip than Van Zandt.
well, here's the thing, and you see it clearly in the film. One of the accusations early on was that it was just, celebrity climbing, and it's just not true. As you see, when Van Zandt calls, you're actually hearing the phone call. It's a surprise to her. He had read the book, Sarah, and it had the themes that he had already worked with in My Own Private Idaho. He requested that meeting. I want to make your movie. I want to option your book. That's how that relationship started. He initiated it based on the art, the work, the fiction writing. Same thing happened with Ozzy Argento. Same thing happened with, Bono. I mean, he summoned them, had read the book, surprised them, sent backstage passes. There was no gate crashing involved. To quote Laura Albert, they were all artist-to-artist connections, which I understand very much. She was an artist. She was getting validation for the books she was very proud to have written. She's obviously the Cyrano character and can't directly feed off of that. But she's on the phone getting that validation, and some of those relationships became deep collaborations, like Gus Van Sant, for instance.
We've got to write screenplays, you and I, and just pretend we're someone else when we submit them. They're never going to get made if I say it's written by me. It's not going to go anywhere.
Well, you got to call someone else.
Yeah, right.
No, I was also just wondering what the people who are in the audio tapes sort of think of the film, or what kind of consent you would need to get from some of the folks.
Oh, well, obviously the whole film was vetted, and like somebody like Courtney Love with that fantastic Coke snort gave personal permission for that. And I have not spoken to the person. Our producers reached out to everyone, notified everybody, and answered questions, and that's what went down.
Nobody
I was not
objected?
part. Well, no, I was not part of the vetting, the lawyers and all that, and the producers did all that. So yeah.
Are we going to take some questions from the audience? Can we raise the lights, but not too much? Sometimes we raise the lights. And it's
Yeah.
intimidating.
Oh, there's people out there.
Why don't we just leave it right there? Oh, I like that. That's nice and cozy. Do we have any questions from the audience?
I see a hand.
Well, where's a hand?
I see it.
Sort of here, yes.
We're being blinded.
There's a microphone.
Well, there's a microphone coming to you. Pretend you're someone else when you ask this question.
Bear with me, I'm always someone else. So, what happened with Dr. Owen? How did he cope? Because he believed this
No,
was...
Dr. Owens, as I came to learn, did not know he was treating. He's a great therapist, and he was treating a broken person. And when JT was exposed, he continued to treat Laura Albert, and that says a lot.
Wow.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty cool.
Did he ever see her?
I'm sorry.
Did they ever meet?
Yes. When he treated her, they met. That's correct. He had met her, as it turned out, as Speedy, as you see in the film. But he never met Laura Albert. So he had no idea. But then, yes, they did meet in sessions.
Over here.
Has Laura written anything since?
Yeah, Laura is writing every day her new memoir, which will be out, I believe, next year. And HarperCollins is republishing Sarah, as well as an expanded edition of The Heart is Deceitful, with I think 7 lost or little-known other Terminator stories. So that'll be out in about 2 months.
Over here, what to your left?
Why was she being sued? Because she didn't write under her real name. I mean, she was being sued, correct? Because she was writing under a pseudonym. She's not allowed to do that.
She was sued over a movie contract option on Sarah. So a producer in New York had optioned Sarah to make Sarah and paid for some screenplay drafts. And it was contract law. He sued her for signing the name JT LeRoy, which of course is a fictitious person. And that suit held up in court, and she was financially ruined. But then the Authors Guild wrote an amicus brief defending Laura Albert's right to write, or anyone's right to write under a pseudonym for personal, sexual, political, any reason you choose.
Raise your hand, please.
A few people, I think, said what happened as a result of that amicus brief, I think.
Well, nothing happened. The amicus brief was literally just a way for the Authors Guild to stand up for all writers. And they didn't have to do it, no one asked them to do it. But they didn't feel that the trial outcome was fair.
So then was she financially ruined?
Yeah, she was absolutely financially ruined by this contract law thing, no doubt. It was the New York Times covered it, it was like a 2-week trial, it was nuts.
Sir.
Did they use any of what she wrote for Deadwood on Deadwood?
Well, according to David Milch, she was an incredible collaborator on Deadwood, and I talked to other Deadwood people. I actually interviewed Milch as well as some of the other writers for as part of my research. Her life crumbled during the Deadwood episodes. So she never got a writing credit on Deadwood, but she was absolutely, according to them, an incredible part of the team. But what many people don't know is that Milch rewrites the whole team. Like, you'll get a script assignment to pay your bills that year, but everyone will work on different scripts, and then it all gets filtered through Milch. And Milch lays down and writes. I filmed him laying down writing.
I once met Milch in Los Angeles. He told me he was going to do a television series for Fox. This is many years ago. He said it was going to be a police procedural set in ancient Rome. He was going to be doing like CSI, Victorian Guard. And he described to me these bizarre anecdotes that he had in mind.
He pulled it off. He's brilliant.
Oh my God, he told me the most bizarre story. I can't even repeat any of them in front of you. Right? They were so filthy and lewd and horrifying about life.
Like a league.
There was a soupçon of that. Is that you, GE? I can't see you. There we go, buddy. We have time for a couple more. Anybody else?
Sorry.
Right over here, yes.
It's tough to see hands.
The lady with her hand up. Yes.
We've been talking a lot about Laura, which is fascinating, of course, but I think the way you put it together was outstanding because there was never a dull moment, and I love the way the
Thank you.
nuances that you put in there just made it. I mean, it was like I was on the edge of my seat, like what's going to come next, you know. And although I'd never known anything about that world before, I think that when she said, you know, it was fiction after all, that's what it was. But I think that the way that you showed it was just phenomenal. I just loved it with all the little animations, and just the way it went from beginning to end was just fantastic.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Over here.
You guys spoke a little bit about how she had real artistic connections with people that she spoke to while this was going on. So how do you, or maybe this isn't something that you can explain, but how did you feel about the fact that Jeff ended up spilling the whole thing to the New York Times when all of these other artists stood by her and knew that it was a genuine thing that she was doing? I don't know, or any comment on that?
Well, my only comment, I don't have any feelings about it. It just happened. He sold out his family. He, at the same time, while selling it out, acknowledged that it was real to Laura. He never undermined her agenda and what she did, and he took part in it all. But he tried to sell it out, and he ratted out his family, and he lives with that to this day. But he tried to sell the story to Hollywood, and it didn't happen. And I don't believe he was capable of actually writing that book he thought he was going to write, but because Laura was the writer, he was not. He was a musician.
Do you have anything else? I just want to say that David and I we've said this many times, David and I go through this process of screening lots of documentaries, and David is, of course, trotting the globe, if you will, trying to find films for not only for the festival, because he's the artistic director of the festival, but for this summer program we do. And if I may, it's like, David's told me that the canon pretty much gets fired in January at Sundance, and all the big documentaries roll out. And we make a very serious effort at booking films here, and a lot of them we can't get. There's movies we like, and we can't get them because they've been sold, and their release schedules don't jive with them giving us a screening here and so forth. So we look at these films, and I remember when I told him this when we were just meeting earlier, I said, this film drove me insane. And this woman drove me insane. I mean, I thought to myself, I'm thinking of Jason Blair and Fry and all these people who are pretending to be somebody else. And it's not like a woman who's, as David said, what if she just said, I wrote these books and inhabited her own persona? But I must say that the interesting thing for me is that it's an obvious thing that I should have picked up on, but I didn't. And that is not just watching the film, but discussing this with you. I'm putting a plug in for our conversations after the film right now. But in the discussion after was the idea, well, of course this is what this woman had to do to process everything that she'd been through. And I had a very harsh opinion. I thought, well, I don't know what I think about these people who are these phonies who pose as someone else. And they put everybody through all this stuff, then they're like, hee hee ha ha, I did this. And I guess there is no hee hee ha ha here with her. This is this woman who had this horribly painful existence. And if this is what it resulted in her inhabiting this character in order to express what she wanted, the way that she wanted to, then your film has taught me that. I really learned a lot from watching this film. Go ahead.
I just wanted to say one other thing that I just wanted you to mention, we were talking about earlier, is the difference in how this film is perceived by a younger generation versus an older generation. I'm wondering if you can speak to that.
Well, yeah, I mean, as we show the film all over now, it's very interesting. Young people, I'm 52, so I'm on the internet, but I'm not on the internet the way they're on the internet. They grew up on the internet. And they come up to me and they're just like, wow, what's the big deal? Like, doesn't everyone have another persona? And I'm like, well, I don't know. I don't even know what an Instagram is, so they have no problem with the story whatsoever. They bring no baggage to it. They have no preconceived notions. They obviously had not read the books. They're like, wow, I want to check those books out. She's cool, she's badass, whatever. And that's what they say, so that's young people.
I just want to say, I do want to put in a selfish plug here that if I ever do decide I want someone to make a documentary about me, I'd like you to do it so that people will forgive all the poor choices I've made. Decisions I've made. So, anyway, thank you all very much for coming down here. We'll see you
We have 2 more screenings, August 6th and August 27th.
August 6th and August 27th.
Thank you.